Okay, time for part 2. So I covered Wwise and how we're doing things in Lucky's Tale. What I also wanted to cover is the Unity aspect, how you get things to actually work in the game. It's kind of important. So first things first, I discussed the need for one play and one stop and how critical it is that they only happen once. So in our project, we have a Bootstrap scene and it's called Don't Destroy on Load. What a Bootstrap scene does is loads every time the game loads, no matter what scene you're in, no matter where you are in the game, no matter how far you've progressed, it always loads. And this is where you can do your setups, where you can load your global banks, where you can do things like trigger this music play, music stop. So as you can see, this is the AK initializer where we set up our parameters for the default pools, lower pool size, all that stuff. The AK bank for load on, this is where all events are loaded. This is where all music is loaded. This is where all sounds are loaded. So we're loading everything in this initialization Bootstrap scene called Don't Destroy on Load. It's important you have something like that. We also have the music play initialization script. Now that's a script in and of itself. I'll load it real quick, but it just controls the play, the stop, the pause, and the resume, and tells it what to do. And so we have a script here that will handle all that stuff. So this is the script. Music play will happen on music play event, and music play event exists here. So post on start, which is a Unity event. When the game begins, post music play event. The music play event is a parameter of music play. So it's going to trigger the Wwise event called music play. So that's how we control the default play and start events from Wwise, and why they always play and why the music always plays. So I'm live connected here. I've turned down the in-game music just so you can hear me talk. Right now, it's playing music because in the game, there is a music prefab. Now we use prefabs to control things because prefabs decouple us from the regular team. If I did everything in this scene and I applied the music changes, I'd have to check out the scene anytime I wanted to do anything, which would cause tons of conflicts in perf force or get. Last thing you want to do is that. So instead you want prefabs that you call into the scene. That way you can hit apply, change your prefab. It lives outside the scene. You can do all your work independently of the team without conflicts. Very important. So we have this prefab loaded. When this prefab loads, look at this. We have the AK stat. These are components that you can load quite easily. We have a box collider that surrounds the entire level. If I go into the scene and I hit F, you'll see that covers the entire map. So when entered this box collider, this trigger on AK state will trigger music mode main, the thing I discussed in the previous video for the main sub switch. Then it'll trigger the inside castle, which is another sub switch for the specific level. And that will begin the music playing because we have it set up that way in the container. And if you look, just to really drive it home, if you look in music main and you look in the layout of interactive music and you look under inside castle, boom, it's playing inside castle. And if we go to the profiler, inside the castle is exactly what's playing right now. So we have that going. That's the trigger enter setting the sub switches that starts the music. And you have to have this little thing for our game. That's just telling it that the player is the trigger for the enter, and that won't collide with other objects in the game, only the player. It's a way to filter that the player is the only thing that triggers it. Now we have other things in our game that are very custom. This is how we handle transitions at different moments of the game. So he Eric put together this script where we can receive from other objects in the scene without having to check out the entire scene. So it's a way to handle, it's almost like a blueprint system, rudimentary controlling of things between object and object without having to check out the entire scene. So when this cutscene started 01 occurs, and if we look up cutscene 01, one of these sequences will say cutscene 01. That's 02. Okay, so when this occurs, and it's the first cutscene, when it starts, it's going to send that message out. And if we go back to my music, we can see cutscene started. I'm receiving that from that thing that sent it. When I receive it, I'm going to trigger this Wwise event because I have the reaction play sound, and it's going to play this particular event. And if I go to Wwise and I search for that event and I find it in the Project Explorer, look at that, it sets the state. So you can set states via events, and that's what we're doing here. I could have done this in a different way, but since we have that script that triggers events instead of states, I'm using it to trigger an event that then triggers the state. It's a way around scripting limitations. And this also happens on the cutscene ended. So when the cutscene ended, it starts this chase music. You can go in there and look at it. So when you enter the chase scene, look at that. Back to the regular inside castle music. And we have another one that's at the end of the cutscene started that does the same thing. It was a different way of triggering it, but I've turned it off. So you could delete this. See how it's not checked? That means it doesn't do anything. So right now we're in the main music. Just to recap, we have the Bootstrap scene loaded, and the Bootstrap scene loads the banks. It loads the music banks, it initializes Wwise, and it calls the music play event to play. And then we use states within the level on a prefab that exists outside of the scene itself to allow us to make our own changes, hit apply, and save them to our prefab. And all our prefabs live in our project in a location. Oh, that should be easier to search on exactly where that is. I forget where the prefabs are. Are they just in audio? Audio prefabs, music? All right, so they're right here. So each level will have its own prefab here, and this is what we as audio people check out. We don't check out the scenes. We use the messages from those scripts to receive them on our prefabs, and we just hit apply to save our prefabs to do these things. So that's that. Let's see. I might as well just show how it works by going through it, and then we'll deconstruct it. Yeah, that's the basics of how this works. So let's go through the actual game and do this real quick. It'd be cool if I could do both at the same time, but I can't. Let me turn it back up. So it's going to be normal music until I get to a certain point. Normal music until I make it to the end. I'm going to get hit here. Playing fast, playing fast. Oh, that looks broken. So we're just on the main music state, nothing's changed. Good old tracks playing, normal gameplay states. Now when I get to the top of this, I'm about to hit the cutscene and the event's going to trigger. So before we do that, I'm going to restart this capture. Okay, still recording, and we're going to go to the profiler layout. So we're going to be able to see these things push. So we should see up here the music. And we can follow it inside the castle. It stops. We can track it right there. Music mode. You can filter by MX music mode. And then it's gone to silent. So it stopped. Now we're in this. There should be no music playing. If we follow capture time, there is no music. It's just silent. The moment I exit this, it's going to go back to the main track. And I think I can do this while I follow live. I'm getting demolished. Oh, I died! Well, we can see how that works. So that would be the music mode death. So it went into the cutscene, it does the state change. At the end of the cutscene, it goes into the ember. Now it'll play this looping endlessly until I defeat the ember or die, in which case it triggers the death state, which goes to silence and then back to whatever state it tells me to be in. And at the top of this is a trigger. Was it broken? Oh no, it's broken! Maybe I have to pick up the head to trigger it. Maybe because I died it broke. That's gotta be what it is. Don't let me up for nothing. Oh, he's gonna get me. Oh, that's a bad transition. We gotta fix that. Most people don't play that long ever. Hey! Now we fixed the timing of that, but that's triggered via if you go to the music prefab, on the music prefab there is a volume, and on the box collider which is this one right here, it is a trigger. And we have a lucky shared triggerable. So when the player enters this trigger, oh, let me turn down the music again. You might not be able to hear me very well. When the player enters this trigger, it uses his custom script to say, play sound, play music event, ended. So it'll play the event ended, and you guessed it, the ended is an event that will change this state type to the regular inside castle state, and that itself is mapped in here via F10 mode, which is also interactive music mode, in the sub switch to inside castle. So you could have put it to ended or inside castle. Either one will go back to that regular track, and it occurs when the player enters this. We also have a play once, possibility, so it would only trigger once. And you can do things when you exit it or enter it, but this is perfect. You're out of danger, you enter this volume, and it goes back to the regular music for the rest of the level. So that's how we handle pretty much everything. The best part of the system right now is the ability to be decoupled. The fact that we're using prefabs that exist outside the scene here, and when we make a change, we can apply it without having to check out the entire scene. Very handy. What makes that possible is this extra script here, this very, very cool Lucky Shared triggerable script, which is fairly complex. Fairly complex script. It handles multiple systems and not just playing sounds. But the fact that it can play sounds and receive stimulus from other objects in the game as a blueprint is what allows us to tie into those events without having to check out the scene. All very cool stuff. So I covered the Bootstrap scene, how the banks are loaded, where we trigger the default switches, the prefabs that are loaded that trigger the level switches for the particular scenes, where they're played, how interactive music works by changing the states and then allowing Wwise to use the transitions tab to cycle through them appropriately, and using the custom scripts we have to interface between different objects in the level, as well as using triggers to change the states as well, which will change the music. That's most of how what we do is done. I forget how the death was handled. That may be on that global play. Don't destroy unload. And that don't destroy unload object, go figure, is only loaded when you play the game. So I can't search on that in the scene because it doesn't exist in the scene until you hit play. Because that's how that scene works. It only loads when you play. So let's take a look, see if we can find this. Don't destroy unload. Maybe it's in there. Setup, audio root. Might be in some subscript somewhere. Maybe it's in this music play initialization. I don't remember where we're putting the death. It's not going to be very helpful to this tutorial. Might be in there. There's got to be some script that's handling it, and I'm not sure where it is. So that's not helpful for that, but the rest covered. So hopefully that helps you see how Unity and Wwise integrate, how you can trigger the different things, how you can trigger the different, brain falling apart, the different states to let Wwise run and just do its thing with the interactive music system and control everything. So I hope that's helpful.